Stay tuned. Coming up, I'll share 19 ways that communications issues can impact situational awareness. Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 359. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by Gassaway Virtual Training. There are 33 online training programs for you to choose from. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually with interaction and Q&A, and some are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment as we explore 19 ways that communications issues can impact situational awareness. If you're a student of near-miss and casualty reports, then you know without a doubt that flawed communications is a major contributing factor when things go wrong. And flawed communications is often a factor when situational awareness is lost. In fact, flawed communications was the second most frequently cited barrier to flawed situational awareness in my research, second to only to staffing issues. But how does communications get messed up at emergency scenes? Let's explore some of the barriers to effective communications. Defining a situational awareness barrier. For the purposes of my research, a barrier to situational awareness was anything that prevented the development of situational awareness, caused the loss of situational awareness, or prevented the recovery of situational awareness once it was degraded. As you can imagine, that can be a pretty long list. In fact, it is a long list. My research uncovered 116 barriers, and I'm confident there are even more yet to be uncovered and researched. One of the categories of barriers to situational awareness is flawed communications. Here are 19 ways communications can get flawed. Biases. A bias is defined as displaying a prejudice for or against something or someone. Biases, as a category unto itself, are a significant barrier to situational awareness and extend far beyond communications challenges. In the context of communications, a receiver of a message can show a bias for or against the messenger, and this gives greater or lesser deference to the message itself. Perceptions. Perception is defined as the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. However, perceptions are not always accurate. When information is shared in the form of communications between two or more people, the perception of the meaning may not be accurate. Is perception reality? This is a question we discussed often during the 50 Ways to Kill a First Responder program. Many think perception is not reality, but it is, at least in the mind of the person with the perception. And they'll have no way of knowing their perception isn't reality until reality rears its ugly head. When a responder communicates his or her observations, they should say, "I think this is what might be going on, but I'm not really sure I'm seeing this right." Of course, responders don't say this. If they did, no one would trust anything they say. So they say things with confidence, and people believe them. Attribution. Attribution is defined as the explanation people infer for the things they see or hear. Attribution can impact communications when the message of the sender is not the meaning attributed by the receiver. The problem is neither may know that they have miscommunicated until the consequence brings it to light. Relationships. Humans can give deference in favor of messages communicated by individuals the receiver has a good working relationship with. Equally, messages communicated by individuals the receiver does not have a good working relationship with can be dismissed or discounted. Why? In a word, trust. We listen to and believe those we trust more than those we don't. Hierarchy. The formal, structured flow of communications can impact the quality of the message. The more layers of organizational hierarchy a message must travel, the greater the potential for flaws in communications. Think about the third grade game of telephone. The more people the message has to flow through, the greater the likelihood the message is going to be distorted. Physical distance. The greater the distance between the sender and the receiver, the greater the potential for miscommunications. This is especially true when the communications is over a telephone or a radio, because the voice inflection can be misinterpreted and the sender and receiver do not have the same benefit of interpreting the non-verbal communications. Cultural differences. As much as we are all in the fire service together, we are all equally unique. These differences can cause miscommunications because terms and phrases that are commonly understood in one culture may be completely foreign in another. And in the context of this discussion, culture does not refer to ethnicity, although this can be a challenge as well. I'm referring to the varying cultures within an existing department and from department to department within the same geographic region. Expected messages. When a message is an expected message, the receiver can tune out the message and the messenger. Parents witness this all the time when having conversations with their children about doing homework or cleaning up their bedrooms or... I'm tuning out now. When a responder feels they understand enough about what is going on an emergency scene, they may tune out the incoming communications. Unexpected messages. When the message is so unexpected that it stuns the receiver, additional messages may not be heard or processed. This occurs because verbal messages are processed first in the auditory processor of the brain and then sent to the visual processor of the brain to have a sketch made of the image drawn into the mind's eye. If the message is so unexpected that it stuns the receiver, the brain can get bogged down trying to make sense out of what it just heard. This can prevent new messages from being processed. Conflicting messages. When a receiver hears two messages that are in conflict with each other, the decision must be made which message to believe. Alternatively, the receiver can go on a search mission for more information that resolves the conflict. Unfortunately, in a high-stress, time-compressed environment of emergency scenes, the receiver may simply jump to a conclusion about which piece of information is accurate. This guess, and a guess it is, may be right or it may be wrong. The lesson is usually apparent based on the outcome. Sometimes the guess can be wrong and luck prevails, and the outcome is still okay. Source value. Like it or not, we can find ourselves believing or not believing a message based solely on how well we know the sender of the message and how much we value their knowledge. We subconsciously evaluate the trustworthiness of the messenger. Does this person have enough credibility to be trusted? How well do I know this person? Do I like this person? Do I respect this person? We judge the messenger and thus the believability of the message. Misinterpretations. It is probably one of the most commonly discussed communications barriers because it's among the easiest to understand. Our language is complex and difficult to understand in its best of conditions. Simile, metaphor, hyperbole, and on and on. The complexity of the spoken word leads to miscommunications. Nonverbal clues. In addition to the spoken word, nonverbal clues and cues send powerful messages. When we are not in physical proximity to see the sender or the receiver, we're missing an important component of communications. In addition to the spoken word, receivers evaluate the inflection in the voice of the sender, which can also significantly alter the intended message. Are you going to paint that car red? Those simple 8 words can have many meanings depending on the inflection. Listen to what happens when we inflect or emphasize one word in this sentence. Are you going to paint that car red? 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 Emotions. When you hear a message, it is darn near impossible not to feel some emotion about the message or the messenger. The emotions in turn trigger recalls of past experiences that bleed into current knowledge. Certain components of the message may contain more emotional triggers than other parts of the message. When something triggers an emotional recall of a past experience, you may, in turn, if only momentarily, zone out from the current moment as you're flooded with recall from past experiences. This may cause you to miss some component of the current message. Inference. We have lots of practice making inferences to messages we receive. In fact, we infer meaning on just about every message we receive. The more we know about the sender of the message, and the better we understand the situation that the sender is in, the more accurate our inference may be. To ensure the accuracy of an inference would require a series of questions and responses between the sender and receiver to ensure the message is completely and accurately understood. Rarely are neither the time nor patience in enough supply during an emergency to accommodate this. The volume of information. The mere volume of information being shared can cause the receiver to suffer from information overload. When this happens, the receiver will start filtering out information. Unfortunately, the brain is not very good about sorting information on the fly and distinguishing the most important information from the less important information. Rather, the brain is more likely to remember the first pieces of information, the last pieces of information, and information that triggers emotional responses. Unfortunately, none of this may be the important information. Multiple incoming cues. The act of listening requires conscious awareness and a need to pay attention to the message. We cannot multitask the act of listening. What we do instead of multitasking is we interleave. Interleaving is single tasking in multiple succession. In other words, we listen to one thing, then the other, then back to the first, assuming there are only two communications inputs to listen to at a time. This requires a lot of heavy lifting by the brain, especially in a dynamically changing environment where there are lots of complex things to see and hear. Equipment issues. There are numerous challenges we can face at an emergency scene when it comes to our communications equipment. Broken radios, incompatible equipment, operating on different frequencies, being on the wrong channel or talk group, not being able to reach a repeater, lapel mics that are not working, muffled modulation through a facepiece, feedback from multiple radio channels in close proximity to each other, and many, many more. Our technology isn't perfect, and the flaws impact the effectiveness of communications. Stress. It's no mistake I saved this one for last. Stress is the game changer when it comes to our performance. In some ways, stress improves performance. In other ways, stress devastates performance. Such is the case for communications. Stress can cause our senses to go on high alert for danger, increasing your audible acuity. This means you may be able to hear things that you would not normally hear if you weren't under stress. This increase in audible acuity may be enough to help you hear a scream of a child trapped in a burning home. On the downside, stress can lead to auditory exclusion. This means that stress can cause you to go deaf. You may simply not hear things, even when those messages are coming through a radio that may be clipped on your lapel just a few inches from your ear. Since 2007, SA Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and 87,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you or someone you care about works in a high-stress, high-consequence, decision-making environment, then we are here to help to improve their safety and survival and to help them accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home to the ones who love them. Since the start of the pandemic, I've had some amazing opportunities to present programs on a virtual platform to groups ranging in size from 6 to 400, with recorded playbacks being viewed more than 22,000 times. Here's hoping that the new year and the introduction of a COVID vaccine will reduce the number of cases and return us back to some form of normalcy for live in-person training. As you will see from this list of upcoming events, things are looking up. On February 8th and 10th, I'll be presenting 3, hopefully live and in-person situational awareness programs for the Spring Fire Department in Texas. On February 17th, I'll be facilitating the Minnesota Virtual Training Series featuring Dr. Chad Weinstein, talking about fire service leadership from the inside out. On March 4th, I'll be facilitating the Minnesota Virtual Training Series, this time featuring Brian Ward, talking about barn boss leadership. On March 8th, I'll be presenting a, hopefully, live and in-person situational awareness program for the National Electrical Testing Association's Power Test Conference in Orlando, Florida. On March 16th, I'll be facilitating the Minnesota Virtual Training Series, this time featuring Fire Chief Alan Lewis, talking about recruitment and retention. On March 23 to 25, I'll be presenting, hopefully live and in person, situational awareness programs for the Anchorage Fire Department in Anchorage, Alaska. Thank you to the organizations that have allowed me to offer your members virtual training, and a special thanks to the 46 agencies who postponed programs in 2020 and who, like me, are patiently waiting for the opportunity to reschedule. If you're interested in hosting a virtual program or a live event, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage, and I will give you a call. Finally, remember to check the show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 359 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.